There's a few more classes that are important for what we're doing. One is a wrapper class, or wrapper classes. Okay? Remember that ints, doubles, chars, booleans with the lowercase b's, they are primitive types, so they don't have any methods associated with them. They're literally just values. But what if I do want them as a class? What if I do want to use methods that they have? Okay? Then I would wrap them in their classes: integer, double, character, boolean. The important piece here is their capital letters. That's what distinguishes them. Well, character, you can see, is totally different in integer, but that's what distinguishes them as a class. Okay? Some of these are listed in the quick reference, which you'll be able to use on your AP test. And also, I linked up the APIs for them. We'll talk about them more in depth when we talk about array lists. The last really important class we're going to talk about is the math class. It's included in Java, so we don't need any imports. And these are some of its methods right here. We have pow, we have sine, we have cosine, we have random. Those are the methods. This one is a constant. Math.py. All right. So you can see here, this is interesting. Why are they being called on the class? Math, 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 math. We haven't done that yet. Why is that happening instead of us making an object for them? Okay? So there's a special thing in Java called static. They're all static. What does that mean? It means we don't need an object. Why would we do that? Okay? Well, if we have things that are owned by all instances of the class, we're going to want them to be static. Okay? We don't want them to be attached to objects. Okay? We use that keyword here, static. And when we call the methods, we call them on the class itself. Okay? This is something you will learn when we start writing methods, but here's where that static keyword comes in, right before the return type. If something's not static, we just leave it out. If something is static, we put that right there in the return type. So, here's an example of a static method. Let's pretend we had a class called hotdog and we wanted to just add two values. We don't need an object to add two values together. So, maybe we'll just put them in the parameters. So I have public static int Adam, and I put one int x and another int y. And then I'm going to return their sum, which is x plus y. In the tester class, what happens when this is declared as static, it's called on the class. So int result becomes hotdog.Adam 4 and 6. It's going to go in here. It's going to say 4 plus 6 is 10, and now it returns 10. So result holds 10. Okay, so why do I want something as static? I want something as static, number one, if it is owned by the class. And number two, number two is written right here. I don't want to use the memory to create an object if I don't have to, okay? There's no reason to do that. Now, here's the deal with the first one if it's owned by the class. So, we talked about different kinds of players, like maybe a basketball player or a football player or a soccer player, anybody who belongs to a team. You might have your own score, but your team may also have a team score. So we're going to revisit this issue, but that's something that is owned by the class. So maybe like a team score. The other instance here is if we don't have to create an object. For anything that's in the math class, we can just put in two different numbers and come out with a number. We don't need any object to do that. Okay. Now we talked about pi for a second. It was capitalized. So we saw it as math dot pi. Why is it capitalized? It's what's called final. This is a reserved word, so it's static. That's why they're in blue, okay? They don't change. So if I have a constant that doesn't change, I'm going to declare it as final. Now you're starting to hear things that you hear in the main method. Public static void, right? Public static. Here's final. Okay? So if we use them declaring final, we give them a name and we capitalize it, and it's never going to change again throughout our program. Okay? Again, there would be a modifier usually here, so like public or private. Tells us who owns that, who can access it. Final, right here, comes before the data type. Okay, so this is only for constants for right now. You can do it for, sometimes they do it for classes, but usually for what we're going to use it for is for constants. So like pi. So here's one. Final double pi, 3.14. Maybe I'll have a gas constant. Okay, maybe I'll have days in the week. Maybe I'll have a char. Maybe I'll have gas constant stands for like the cost of gas. But why do we want to declare a constant? Well, it's because we're lazy. So let's say we use that constant over and over and over and over and over again. We just, want to declare it at the top of the class, and then we can just change it one time at the top of the class. Okay? So, I'm going to do a couple of these. So if I want to create a final static variable, call it 2 squared. So, I'm going to say, let's say, public, I think it goes static and then final. I'll have to check. And then I'll say, I don't know, 2 squared. But it's final, right? So I gotta go 2 squared, almost caught me. Becomes 2 times 2. Okay? Now negative 2 cubed. Okay? So cubed, I could do the same thing and multiply it 3 times. I can also use math.pow. Okay? But I'm going to show you how to use math.pow here. Create a variable circle area and save the area of a circle to it. We can use R for radius. Okay, so I'm going to say, why isn't it final? Well, because the R is going to change. Could change anyway. So maybe I'll make this private. It's a double. And I'll call it circle area. And it's pi R squared. Okay, so I'm going to write this on the next line. Math dot pi times R squared. So how do I do that? I could do R times R. Or I could say math dot pow R comma 2. Math dot pow is used for exponents, which you can find out in the math class. Okay, square root. Maybe I want to do square root. I'll say double SQRT of 5, and maybe I'll do it's math dot SQRT, that's for square root of 5. Okay, now this one's interesting. Okay, a random number to decide what is the winning ticket in a raffle of 450 tickets. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to the math class because I always get confused with this. So I think we were in it in Safari. So I'm going to see that was math.random. You're going to use this a lot in this class. So math.random returns a double value with a positive sign greater than or equal to 0 and less than or 1. Okay, so What does that look like? This is how I remind myself of this. Random is 0, 1. If you don't know that, that's math notation. This is inclusive. This one's exclusive. So it's kind of helped me in my mind here. So I'm going to say it's an int, right? So I'm going to say int when becomes... I'm going to have to... I know that at some point I'm going to have to cast this thing because this is giving me a double. Math.random gives me a double between 0 and 1. So I'm going to have to multiply it and cast it. Let me leave myself some space to cast it. So int math.random, and it's 0 to 450. So I'm going to say times 450. What does that do for me? That now gets me from 0 to 450, but it doesn't include 450, so I got to add 1 to that because I want to be between 1, because I want to be between 1 and 450. I'm going to assume that the first one was at 1, so if I add 1, it'll get me there. So that's using an example using the math.random method.